Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next round of the IFS CPD webinar. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking about retirement income streams today. So you may recall back in I think it was March, we had a retirement income panel talking about how lifetime income streams can play an important part in a member's overall retirement income. For those that were at the conference late last month. We also had a little panel talking about this concept as well and how consumers and members thinking about these types of products. And as we all know, innovative income streams are playing a bigger role. There's a lot of moving parts, and probably will be more moving parts going forward as well in this space. So we're very excited to have Allianz join us today. We've just recently put the Agile product on our approved product list. So I thought it was important to talk about this particular product, but also in relation to how this could fit into a member's portfolio. And we also thought we'd have a bit of a technical recap as well, because I know over the last few months, whilst we've been talking about this in terms of how to talk to a member, we probably haven't had a bit of a refresher on the technical side as well. So I thought that was a really good opportunity as well. So I'm going to hand over to our presenters. So firstly, we've got Isabel Denaconi, the Technical Services Manager of Allianz. She has a decade of experience in tech services, including pre and post planning, social security and aged care. And prior to joining Allianz, she spent 4 years being part of a licensee's internal technical team, providing subject matter expert and technical support to the advisors. And joining her, we've got Yannick Beitzer. Is that how you spell your name, Yannick? Say your name, Yannick, sorry.
Almost. Fitzer.
Fitzer, thank you. And Yannick's the manager of Group Retirement Solutions at Allianz. So, Isabel, I think I'm handing over to you first, but I'll also be monitoring the Q&A function. So, if anyone's got any Q&A, any Q&A questions, just pop them in there, and we'll pause a few times throughout the presentation and hopefully answer those questions. But otherwise, over to you, Isabel.
Thanks so much, Craig. Funnily enough, I'm actually handing this to Yannick. So over to you, Yannick.
Good stuff. Thanks, Ez. And absolutely great to be at your conference last month, Craig and team. And thank you so much for having us today. We're absolutely delighted to be approved on your APL and to be here with you. And I can see a lot of participants on the line. So thank you so much for your time. We know it's really precious and we don't take it for granted. During today's session, we're going to talk through the retirement landscape so far and describe the distinctive features of Agile. In the second half of the session, we'll bring these concepts to life with a case study, providing context to help you identify the target market for our product and discuss some of the implications of utilizing a product which meets the capital access schedule. Now, before I jump into the slides, let me just take a quick step back. We're going to run through a lot of content at pace today. So I wanted to share a couple of key messages up front because we're really proud of the product that we've brought to market. Agile, the Allianz Guaranteed Income for Life, represents an absolute step change in how you can help your clients meet their retirement goals. It's available from age 50. It provides capital protection without sacrificing growth, and it gives you the ability to optimize for full capital access or age pension uplift once that choice becomes relevant later in life. And of course, it's a fully flexible income for life at market-leading rates. So that's what we're here to talk to you about today. Now, before Ez cuts me off, I'll be good and I'll get back to my slides. You can jump through. There we go. Thank you, Ez. So who are we? Allianz Retire Plus might be a new brand to you, but I'm sure you're all familiar with the Allianz brand, as will most of your clients. Likely, they'll have held some insurance with us at some point in their life. So we've been in market here for over 100 years. And we've got over 4 million customers today. Allianz Retire Plus is a purpose-built vehicle to bring the best of the Allianz Group's global retirement capability to the Australian market. The Allianz Group is a leading provider of retirement solutions across Europe and the US, and I'll highlight just a few of these on the next slide. So a lot of the product innovation that underpins Agile has been influenced by Allianz Life in the US. We're the leading provider of innovative retirement income products in the US, with over $260 billion in lifetime income and annuity assets under management over there. Agile-like products are absolutely flying off the shelf over there, with about $40 billion in annual sales. So it's very strongly supported over there. The US also supports us with two specialist functions that underpin the product. Allianz Investment Management is our global center of excellence for derivatives trading, and this enables us to offer protected growth at very low cost. And Allianz is one of the top 5 global asset managers, including through our in-house bond manager, PIMCO, with almost $3 trillion under management today, with the majority of these being retirement related. That's it from me to set the scene. Over to you, Ez.
Thanks, Yannick. In terms of what we're going to spend the next couple of slides looking at, it's really giving you some context around what's the journey that we've taken so far to be able to bring you this Agile product today. In terms of, I guess, starting point when I think about the retirement income landscape so far, I'd be surprised if some of you already haven't heard of these concepts in terms of these innovative retirement income streams. So back in 2017, the government came in and legislated a bunch of super and tax law changes. Broadly, in terms of what those changes are designed to achieve, it's really to ensure that these IRS-style products help deliver high income for life in comparison to account-based pensions, deliver on that comfort for retiree clients to ensure they never run out of income. I'd also add it's adding some level of confidence that they're able to spend a little bit more of their retirement savings. I find that in some instances, clients who are quite worried about whether they've got enough money to go the distance, they run the risk of underspending. In fact, living quite a frugal life, not realizing that they do have access to products that can give them a slightly better quality of life because they've got that reliable income coming through the door. And lastly, I would mention flexibility. A lot of these new era style products are going to give clients a little bit more access, in some instances like Agile, 100% access to the underlying investment value. We then saw in 2019, so we've got these super and tax changes that are allowing superannuation funds and product providers to get out there and deliver these products. But how are they treated for Social Security? What's actually that missing link? The government came through and delivered some legislation that afforded some beneficial treatment to these new style income stream products. In terms of 2022, we saw the introduction of the Retirement Income Covenant. I'd be surprised if you haven't already encountered some information on that so far, and Yannick's going to talk to that in a little bit more detail shortly. And that brings us to today. You would have potentially encountered several new product players in the market. In terms of the Agile product that we're going to step through in quite a bit of detail shortly, it's really unpacking how and why this Agile solution delivers better outcomes for clients, be it generating an additional level of foundational income or potentially delivering on certain bequests or estate planning outcomes that they're looking to achieve in terms of their goals. So you've heard me talk about these innovative retirement income streams. What do they actually look like once we get under the hood? When I think about innovative retirement income streams, I call it the step down. Because in terms of the access to capital that's gained by utilising a product that aligns with the capital access schedule, you've got that declining withdrawal value shown in the blue line here on that chart. It's a straight line reduction all the way down to life expectancy. And in this chart, we're just using a life expectancy for a 65-year-old male. In terms of that death benefit, that's where we see that step down. Clients who utilise a CAS-aligned product will have access to 100% of their investment amount paid on death. But if they actually reach half of life expectancy, you can see from the chart that it actually aligns with the general withdrawal value. So again, key takeaway here, you've got that straight line reduction to life expectancy, and then on the death benefit, you've got that step down effect. Now, how about this Social Security beneficial treatment? In terms of the Social Security treatment of these new style era products, it really is that 60% of the purchase price until age 84, or if they're a little bit older, it's a minimum of 5 years, dropping to 30% thereafter. On this slide, I've included a group of grandfathered income stream products where if you've got clients in these types of products where they were purchased before 1 July 2019, they still have access to that deductible amount. And there are still some legacy products out there that are asset test exempt. They may be 100% or 50% exempt for asset test purposes. But the key focus from this particular chart is I would highlight here, if a client is investing $100,000 today, they do have that ability to instantly access a 40% reduction for the asset test. Now, the retirement income covenant. Yannick, is there anything that you want to highlight or speak to in terms of the key themes on this particular slide for the audience?
Thanks, Ez. So the retirement income covenant, as mentioned, came out in 2022, and it's really legislating for 3 pillars that trustees have to meet to remain compliant. And that's helping retirees maximize their expected retirement income, have flexible access to those funds during retirement, all while managing expected risks to the sustainability and stability of expected retirement income. In the past, advisors have had to assemble a bunch of different products to achieve these 3 pillars, and that's what's made it quite difficult to bring these priorities to market across the board to members who may not all have advice. But we're now seeing products like Agile come to market that actually support all of those 3 pillars within the one product, making the process a little bit easier and a lot smoother. But what this really means is that trustees now have a legislated responsibility to help their members meet these 3 objectives. And we're seeing this filter through to advice practices and licensees for building out their own retirement philosophies to support clients into and through retirement. Back to you, Ez.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Yannick. So if we take a quick moment to do a short comparison into what are these new style products as a result of the capital access schedule, that beneficial Social Security treatment, how does it differ to your more traditional style income streams? So in the past, you might have encountered income streams where you weren't potentially able to access as much of the underlying investment value as your client required at certain times in their lifetime. I'd probably also highlight there are some trade-offs in the past that clients perhaps weren't willing to make. When I talk about trade-offs, it's really access to potential growth on their investment value. Those traditional style products generally involve locking in some kind of investment value, and it doesn't actually have access to any underlying growth over time. It doesn't give your client that ability to potentially enhance estate planning outcomes. Perhaps by the time they want to actually switch on that lifetime income, they're not actually being able to take advantage of growing the value of the investment to prop up the value of their lifetime income when they eventually switch it on. I would probably also highlight before we move on is that flexibility in terms of, do you actually need to take a CAS-aligned product up front? What's unique about the Agile product that we're bringing to you today is you as the advisor can actually make that recommendation at some point in time along the client journey. You don't necessarily have to always make that decision up front. And so depending on client circumstances, as they change over time, you can make the decision as to whether you do want to actually take advantage of that step down with the capital access schedule, or do you want to give your client the ability to access 100% of the underlying investment value? Now, Allianz guaranteed income for life. What exactly are we trying to achieve when it comes to utilizing this style of product? A couple of things. It's giving your client growth with protection. They'll still have access to underlying investment growth with some protected investment options, giving them some downside protection as well. Of course, with these new style era products, Agile is giving your client access to a lifetime income stream. Flexibility. You've heard me mention a couple of times now, they do have the ability, depending on the product features, to access 100% of the underlying asset value. There are some products out there in the market that can sometimes apply a certain type of restriction, where be it after a certain period of time, the amount that they can actually withdraw can sometimes disappear altogether. And lastly, certainty. With the agile style product, they're actually locking in an interest rate today, which with ongoing annual deferral, by the time they choose to actually turn on that income, we've been able to boost their income rate. So they're being rewarded for delaying the commencement of their lifetime income. In terms of the target market, I would highlight for you, it's for clients who can get in as early as age 50. So with Agile, what's quite unique is you can use restricted superannuation money if that's appropriate, or you can use non-superannuation investment for someone as young as 50. The minimum investment amount is $20,000, and depending on what's appropriate for your client, you also do have the ability to add a second life insured, where income payments can continue for the life of a second person in the event the primary life insured passes away. So how does Agile work? In terms of Agile, it really comprises two key phases. If we're recommending a product today, your client will start off in the growth phase. So in the growth phase, they can make the most of their protected investment options. They're maintaining access to market growth subject to caps, coupled with downside protection. They're also securing that level of income certainty where, based on the age they are today, when you're recommending the product, they're locking in one component of their lifetime income rate. And as mentioned, for each full year they spend in growth phase, they're getting an income escalator that will eventually boost the income that they receive when they turn it on. Now, what happens when they turn on that lifetime income? You'll see on the chart here on the bottom right, there's two styles of income that you can choose from. You've got flat style income payment, doesn't change, very reliable, and we make our payments monthly. Or they can choose the rising income options, where they've got that ability to take advantage of any positive return on the underlying index as well. Now, what does this look like if we take a look at a quick illustrative example? So on this slide here, we've got an example for a 50-year-old female who's investing in a non-superannuation product in Agile, and it's starting off with $100,000. In this particular instance, it's appropriate for her. Year on year, she's decided, well, look, I'm not actually ready to turn on this lifetime income, so I do want to continue deferring. If you're asking yourself, well, what's the benefit of actually taking advantage of a longer deferral window? Well, you're actually, in fact, boosting the rate. I draw your eyes on the top right to that box in blue, where if she defers this income to age 70, she's actually able to turn on a lifetime income rate of 9.15%. And we are applying that 9.15% against the 201,051 investment value. So over time, from age 50, she's taken advantage of that growth year on year with the protected investment options. And when she turns on income, she's managed to take advantage of 15 years of that income escalator. And what we see on the bottom of the chart is just a quick sample in terms of the fixed income option. So if she was to turn on income at age 70, in future dollars, we know that we can guarantee her 18,396 of income switching on at that time.
And just we had a question through, Isabel. So transfer balance cap and total super balance considerations when we're deferring those, and how are they counted and assessed in those instances?
Great question. In terms of a superannuation style product of Agile, let me simplify it. So when we talk about Agile as a superannuation investment, it's actually an underlying asset. So just like you've got super and accumulation where there's cash, there's shares, there's other investment products, you can actually acquire Agile as one of the underlying assets. So when we talk about the total super balance, what's really happening is when your client's accumulation phase interest moves into retirement phase, that account-based pension is going to include Agile as an underlying asset. So what's reported for transfer balance cap purposes is the account-based pension value, which feeds through the Agile withdrawal value. Mm-hmm. So I hope that makes sense. If not, again, For any detailed questions, happy to talk after or talk separately as well.
Yep, no, that was good. Thank you. And I mean, I suppose one thing that we've talked about before with advisors is that, you know, they get to at the moment they get to retirement and they've all been looking at their lump sums, and whereas this is a bit of a different way of looking at it. It's kind of almost preconditioning them to look at, you know, an income stream down the track, and so it's not a big surprise. They don't have to make that. You know, at retirement, they have to make a whole bunch of decisions, whereas this one, if they've already started thinking about this a few years out, I think that could be a big advantage as well.
I totally agree. If, in fact, from a technical standpoint, with technical perspective, it helps smooth out that journey in terms of that lifetime income conversation. Because if you can get your clients to start thinking about utilising a lifetime income stream as an underlying asset of the accumulation phase, we, from a trustee perspective, we pay it into the trustee cash account because, again, we're an underlying asset. They can roll that agile investment across to the account-based pension. So they've got plenty of time to become familiar with how this lifetime income style product works. Yeah. So in terms of the protected investment growth options, there's a couple to choose from. And I would say the main advantage of having a variety to choose from is from an ongoing advice service perspective. Each year, as you're meeting up with your client as part of your regular review, you've got that opportunity to update. Do you want to change the investment mix of the agile investment, or do you want to keep it the same as the previous year? In lifetime income phase, it actually switches to the Australian Equity Index option, Total Protection. So that once we turn on that lifetime income, it makes your life a little bit easier because, again, clients, they're going to get that regular monthly income from Agile, be it into the account-based pension cash account or paid into their bank account if they elect to use a non-superannuation product. Now, Yannick, in terms of the protected investment options, can you talk to some of the back testing that we've done on this?
Yes, so we've mentioned a couple of times now that Agile gives you access to protection without sacrificing growth. And here's the proof in the pudding right here. There's a lot going on these slides, so I'm not going to talk through everything, and we're not going to get too deep into portfolio theory. But essentially what these charts and numbers show you is that including an Agile investment as part of your portfolio mix decreases the risk of that portfolio, which you see on the horizontal axis, the standard deviation, which is a common measure of risk of a portfolio, without sacrificing return, which is the vertical axis on the left. So what we've done is we've modeled a bunch of traditional vanilla portfolios, growth, balanced, moderate on this slide, and they're the three gray dots that you see on the right-hand side of the chart. Those are just those standard vanilla portfolios. Now, if we add a 25% Agile partially protected investment to the mix, what happens is the variability in returns decreases significantly, and you can see that by those bubbles shifting over to the left, without returns decreasing, and in most of the cases, the returns actually increase slightly. So what you can do is you can give more certainty to your clients as they move into that pre-retirement and retirement phase without sacrificing growth. And all of these numbers here are after fees.
Thanks, Yannick. And is there anything
on the next slide? We've done exactly the same. Thanks, Ez. On the next slide here, we've done exactly the same thing with the total protection option, which we see used more with conservative or moderate portfolios, given that there's no exposure to downside risk in these, so it's fully capital protected with still upside potential. And you see the same broad story playing out on this slide. So you see a big shift to the left, a lot less risk in those portfolios without significantly impacting returns. And what this can allow you to do, if you have a risk target for a client's portfolio, you can actually upweight the remaining 75% of that portfolio to get back to the risk target that you were originally at, which would then further improve returns. Now I'm going too far into portfolio theory, so I'm going to lift back out of that and leave anything else for the questions. Back to you, Ez.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Yannick. In terms of access to capital, you've heard me mention a couple of times now that they can access up to 100% of the underlying investment value year to year. The key takeaway from this particular slide is depending on the timing of if and when they make a full or a partial withdrawal, there can be a small MVA that applies. But in terms of the death benefit, if clients pass away at any time during the investment timeframe, even whilst we're paying income, if there is an underlying investment value remaining, when they pass away, there's no penalty paid whatsoever. From a process perspective, I would highlight in terms of death benefit, if it's a superannuation product, we pay it to the super trustee, to the cash account. If it's a non-superannuation product, you've got the ability to make beneficiary nominations on the non-superannuation option. Now, we've talked about Social Security treatment. We've talked about that 60% assessment up to age 84, and then we've talked about 30% thereafter. So the interesting thing about Agile is you've heard me mention you can turn it on. You make the decision when it's appropriate. Does your client need that age pension uplift? Do they need that beneficial treatment? So in terms of Agile, what happens if you don't actually make that election? If your client is a full pensioner or a self-funded retiree, and you've decided, well, look, we actually don't want to restrict access to capital. We don't want to give up any of that growth over time that we've been able to take advantage of, because clients in this particular instance, they're not going to get any additional age pension uplift by making the election. The great thing about Agile is you don't have to make that election. In terms of the income test treatment, it's actually nice and simple. Whether you choose age pension plus or not, it's always a 60% assessment of regular ongoing income payments for the income test. Now, put a pin in this concept of this 60-30, this age pension plus feature, because there is a slide in the case study that gives you, it's a really specific example in terms of how our Agile election of the age pension plus, it can actually outperform some other traditional style products in the market in terms of additional age pension uplift in comparison. So to wrap up the Agile product component, we're going to take a look at the case study shortly, but if there are a few things to focus on in terms of Agile, it's that income certainty and stability. You can time it to retirement. So again, if your client invests at age 50, you've got it in accumulation phase, and then they're switching over to retirement phase, you can make that decision if you want to turn on lifetime income at that point of transition, or do you want to draw down on other account-based assets or other available non-super assets and then take advantage of that deferral in the income rate? If you recall with the example, getting from age 50 to age 70, we were able to achieve 9.15% in terms of return. In terms of the investment value, we talked through the protected investment options, and Yannick provided quite a succinct summary of some of the back testing that we've done. Now, we're not asking for 100% of your client's portfolio, but the proposition that I'm putting to you is that even a 20 to 30% allocation to Agile, it can help improve outcomes in terms of helping your clients achieve that level of desired income that they're after, especially when we think about that longevity risk. What's the chances that your client is going to be able to or comfortable with living solely on the age pension alone? And lastly, wealth accumulation. If you're investing early for someone as young as 50, you've got that ability to take advantage of market growth. And we're embedding in the client's overall portfolio a certain level of downside protection as well. Now, before we go to the case study, do we have any other questions, Craig?
Yes, we've got one question. So someone just wants to test their understanding. So I'll just read what they've said. So it's basically a diversified super fund. So it could be, obviously, I'll just add in, could be super, it could be a non-super, with no market risk being converted into a guaranteed lifetime annuity at retirement. So there is existing products, but the upside here is that there is no market risk. Is that a correct understanding?
Yannick, did you want to
take that one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Ez. Look, I think there's a few nuances here. I think broadly you're spot on, but there's a couple of nuances. Firstly, you have the power of deferral for clients that are currently in preservation. They're able to benefit from that deferral by boosting the lifetime income rate while they're anyway in deferral, and then they can take that juicy rate into their retirement. And then the other things I'd highlight is just the additional flexibility that this product gives you. So that full flexible access to capital if you choose that, if your client needs access to capital later on in life. And then you already mentioned it, the different levels of protection in the growth stage. So you can go partially protected, which will give you higher expected returns, but it'll only protect the first 10% of any market losses, or total protection, which will protect you from all market losses, but then has a lower cap on your maximum return in any given year. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was a good explanation. Thanks, Yannick.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks. All right. So if we're ready to, now let's take a look at Alice, our case study that we've put together for you today. To simplify things, we've actually just kept it to a non-superannuation example. So we don't have any detailed projections for you to consider. What we're really isolating for you is how does Agile perform over time, and what is that opportunity in terms of that deferral as well. So in this particular instance, Alice has had a family member who's recently passed away, and she's received a small inheritance of $100,000. And she's come to you for advice. She said, look, I'm only 55. I'm not comfortable putting it inside super because I'm thinking I might actually want to access a portion of this investment at some time in the next 10 years. But what I do want to do is, if I can, I want to leverage this $100,000 to try and optimize any potential future retirement outcomes where possible. So sitting outside super in a non-superannuation Agile, but she's thinking of retirement income broadly. So in terms of the investment growth, that protected investment option, Alice is able to invest that $100,000 in an Agile investment, and she's been able to take advantage of the different investment performance options. And again, remember, as advisors, you've got that opportunity year on year to do that review. And she's also got access to potentially applying various types of beneficiary nominations. In terms of the Agile process for non-superannuation money, we can make the payment directly to beneficiaries. So it can be potentially a little bit quicker to some other style products, depending on whether probate's involved or not. By actually deferring lifetime income commencement, so the tip that I would highlight for you here actually is, you'll notice that in terms of the investment value on the chart here, it continues to grow up until she turns on that lifetime income. When she turns on that lifetime income, that's when we start to see that income get drawn down from her investment capital. And when I talk about investment capital, that's already a cue in terms of the potential tax consideration. So if you've dealt in any of those traditional style lifetime income products, you've probably heard the term deductible amount. She will be able to take advantage from a tax perspective once she commences lifetime income payments of that same deductible amount treatment. So when she commences lifetime income, it's not going to be 100% accessible for tax purposes. It is going to include a portion of return of capital to dampen any tax outcomes as well. In terms of that lifetime income rate, so we know there's two components of the income rate. So at age 55, when she's commenced the investment, she's been able to lock in a rate of 4.65. By taking advantage of that long deferral window, she's been able to get it to 9.15%. And we've been able to give Alice that assurance that if and when she wants to turn on that lifetime income, if it's at age 70, we can give her 18,396 of income. But just remember to keep at the back of your mind that flexibility around the deferral. If her circumstances change, she could make the decision to turn on income a little bit earlier if that's appropriate, or if by the time she reaches 70, if she's managed to grow any other assets in her portfolio, she could choose to continue taking advantage of that deferral. She could choose to turn on that income potentially when she enters aged care. So there's various ways that you can play with that deferral period for the lifetime income payment. Now, what does it look like? So this is very similar to the illustration we brought up earlier. She's been able to take advantage of that portfolio growth over time. And at the point in time where she wants to turn on that lifetime income, she's receiving 18,396. Now, if you recall, I mentioned there's two different styles of income payment with the Agile product. we've shown you the fixed income payment option here. But if she was to choose the rising style of income payment, again, taking advantage of any potential positive returns in that Australian Equity Index total protection, that protected investment option, income payments will start a little bit lower compared to fixed. But then we know over time, she's being able to take advantage of that potential uplift as well. Now, if you recall, what's that Social Security treatment on the product? It's 60% of lifetime income payments that counts for the income test. If Alice remains asset tested, that rising income payment over time is generally not going to impact her age pension, because she's still going to be able to take advantage of that age pension uplift, because in this particular example, she's taken advantage of that age pension plus election. Now, what does it look like when we talk about that age pension plus election in a little bit more detail? If we unpack what it means for Agile specifically, what's unique about Agile is that we fall under something called the purchase amount. So on the day that Alice invests in Agile, at age 55, she pops in 100,000 for Social Security purposes. Now, remember, she's only age 55. This will only impact her if she's on carer payment from day one. But assuming that she's not on any kind of Social Security assessment or entitlement until age 67, she's actually been able to take advantage of growing a slightly smaller assessable amount for Social Security. So if we focus on the line in grey, what's actually happening year on year is that that purchase amount is the deeming rate on each anniversary date compounded. So what actually takes effect on age 67 when she applies for age pension, or if you manage to speak to her early and she's got that 13-week window to pre-apply for age pension, we're able to report a slightly smaller, in this case, quite a significantly smaller assessable amount for Social Security purposes. If we look at a traditional lifetime income stream product where that CAS election is made up front to access that 60/30 step down, the key takeaway for you here in comparison is that it's almost a $30,000 difference in that Social Security treatment, all because we took the time to make the recommendation of the Agile product as early as possible. We've been able to take advantage of a longer deferral period, and we've smoothed out the effect of the assessable amount by the time she applies for age pension. What I'll also highlight to you here on this slide is that we've been able to get her an additional $2,070 of age pension at age 67 by going down the path of an Agile recommendation. And were there any other questions before I throw to Yannick to wrap up on this slide?
Just a couple of questions, Isabel. So one, in the growth phase, what are the tax implications, if any, that needs to be considered?
Yep. So in the growth phase, year on year, there actually is, well, there's returns. We're taking advantage of this protected investment options. So the annual return every single year, net of any fees or premiums, etc., it's taxable to the client for non-superannuation money.
Right. Yeah. So just at their marginal rate. Yep.
Yep. And we do apply a PAYG withholding to that, and they'll receive an end of year financial statement as well.
Yep. Great. And just if it was taken, if someone wants to look at this in a superannuation setting, can they access this direct, your product direct, or does it? Yeah. So and how does that work? So does it have an inbuilt cash account as well, or how does your direct super product work?
Yannick, did you want to talk to that whilst I get the next slide ready?
Thanks, Ez. So while we're just on this slide, I'll just jump back to this just really quickly. So the one thing that I wanted to highlight here is all of you are today likely using income stream products for Part H pensioner style members who get that massive uplift in Part H pension by putting some of their capital into an innovative income stream. If you leverage Agile, you get that same benefit, but because of the deeming rate that's applied to the purchase price throughout the period of deferral, you actually end up getting an even juicier age pension uplift. And so in this example here, that Ez just walked through, that's an extra $2,000 above and beyond a traditional annuity style solution that we're able to generate in year one of Part H pension uplift, which can be absolutely massive for that cohort of workers. Now, back to the question, how do you access the product? So we've already covered non-super monies, direct application to Allianz Retire Plus. Super monies, we're currently live on Hub 24. So you're able to access the product there. That obviously is a fully featured wrap account. We are looking to build out integrations into other platforms and into funds directly. So watch this space. There's a lot of really exciting things to come, but you're absolutely able to write the product with super monies today on the Hub 24 platform.
Right, thanks, Yannick. And with those deeming rates, sorry, did you cover that as well? In terms of, is that reset, so they go in at the current, is that reset every year, the deeming rates, is that right?
So in our example, for simplicity, we've just applied 2.25% year on year. But what will actually happen in real terms is on the anniversary date, where we are required to compound that value, we'll use the upper deeming rate as at the date of the anniversary date. Yeah, so it will fluctuate year on year depending where deeming rates fall.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, perfect. Interestingly enough, that question has led us really smoothly to this superannuation slide. So thank you very much for that. In terms of the superannuation structure, this slide here is just a really quick flow chart of what it looks like. So you heard me mention earlier, it's an underlying asset of the fund. Yep, we pay it into the cash account held by the super trustee. And in terms of the outcomes that apply, the death benefit applies at the member level. So if someone passes away and they don't have a second life insured and there's an underlying investment value remaining, we pay the death benefit into the super cash account. And then it's reliant on the super trustee to administer that death benefit in line with SIS regulations. If you're curious about tax, because we talked a little bit about tax throughout the session, again, in the superannuation environment, if Agile is sitting in accumulation phase, annual return on growth is taxed at up to 15%. You do have the flexibility to turn on lifetime income phase, even sitting within accumulation. And again, if less the deductible amount, if there's any accessible amount to the trustee, taxed at 15%. But in retirement phase, no tax whatsoever. If it's flowing across into the account-based pension as an underlying asset, no tax applies whatsoever. Does that make sense? Hope so.
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. Now, key takeaways. Things to highlight in terms of Agile. We've talked about that purchase amount example and taking advantage of that deeming year on year that compounds on the purchase amount, and it becomes accessible when the client turns age 67. And we saw in the example that Alice, in that particular situation, she chose the Age Pension Plus option. She chose the Age Pension Plus option because as a part pensioner, we as advisors wanted to maximise her social security entitlement. But if you're dealing with clients who potentially may not see an uplift in their age pension outcomes, well, we've got that flexibility in terms of you not having to make that decision whatsoever. If by the time they get to age 67, you decide, based on the client's circumstances year to year, perhaps they've received a significant inheritance. Perhaps that in terms of a change of circumstances, they don't actually require that Age Pension Plus feature. You don't have to turn it on. And remember, you're keeping access to that investment growth over time. They'll be able to make full and partial withdrawals of that full investment amount throughout the life of their investment. So there's no downside to taking the Agile product for full pensioners. If anything, again, I'd keep in front of mind that 9.15%. If you've got a long deferral period, we're able to get them a significant lifetime income rate without having to sacrifice any access to capital. In terms of your self-funded retirees on the other side, so we know for part pensioners, absolutely. Using Agile can benefit age pension outcomes. I would probably highlight for self-funded retirees, you can use it in a slightly different way. Perhaps they want to de-risk some of their portfolio. Perhaps they're looking to simplify some of their investments over time. I find, especially when I've spoken to advisors with clients with SMSFs, often you find if it's a husband and wife and the husband who was the main financial manager, he's passed away, It's the wife with a longer life expectancy who's come for advice saying, look, I really don't want to administer the SMSF on my own anymore. Like, I really don't know what I'm doing. You know, having that agile component in their portfolio can make it a little bit simpler, because we're giving that assurance. Even in that self-funded retiree environment, she's still going to get that regular, reliable monthly income. Other strategic considerations I would highlight in terms of agile, it is a lifetime income stream. We're bringing to you a lot of other bells and whistles that give you that ability to really tailor how this income stream performs for your client. In terms of non-superannuation money, you can absolutely make a specific death benefit nomination on the product. And again, we pay it directly to beneficiaries. I've touched on the fact that our lifetime income payments, they do include a deductible amount. There's a return of capital, which is tax-free. And also, you can incorporate downside protection in terms of that portfolio. Again, we're maintaining access to growth, but we're also protecting them from downside as well. Another thing I would actually highlight to you is when we talk about the rising income option, if you recall on the chart for Alice, you've got that option where the payment's rising over time. With our style of product, if market conditions are negative, if market conditions decline, our income payment does not ever decline. So if market conditions are negative, on a rising option, the income payment actually remains the same. So the key question for you in terms of agile lifetime income payments and the appropriate style of payment to take, it's really ensuring the client understands with agile, their payment never goes backwards. But we need to be careful if you're considering any other style of product. If it's market linked, is that income payment potentially going to go down? Because the last thing you want to happen is when market conditions are negative and clients are potentially worried about paying their bills or affording groceries, if they're concerned about having to budget a little bit more tightly, you can give them that reassurance that on that protected part of that income, on that agile investment that you've recommended, the income is actually not going to reduce. Yeah. So again, it's giving them that peace of mind that they're able to afford their baseline essentials no matter what happens, because our income payment never reduces.
That's a good point, and kind of I've got a question around similar to that. So between the fixed and the flexible options, once you've made that choice, is that irrevocable, or is that, or do you get to change down the track? How does that
on the lifetime income payment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you actually turn on that lifetime income, you are making the choice of either the fixed or the rising on that day only, and it's locked in.
Right. And is there, it was in your graphs there, but how long with your testing before the rising kind of catches up to the fixed? Is there a...
It's a good question, Yannick. Do you have any detail on that?
We'll have to take that one on notice, but yeah, I don't have anything for you. The way that we see the rising option used is really for clients who are worried about inflation risk, and the ASX total protection option over time performs better than inflation. So you're actually getting a slightly positive hedge there over time.
Yep, no, that makes sense, and a good point that one, that can never go down once it's
yeah. So we saw that a couple of years ago with some CPI linked products. When inflation turned negative for a brief spell, it caused a lot of angst with retirees who thought that they had a guaranteed income for life, which of course they did, but they didn't realize that meant it could go backwards if it was inflation linked. And so that caused a lot of volumes to flow through to call centers, to advisors, with retirees calling up saying, I've got $20 less this month, what's going on? And this just helps streamline that whole experience, especially when market conditions are tough and retirees are probably already quite stressed because the rest of their portfolio has decreased in value. And so then the last thing that they want from an emotional perspective is the guaranteed portion of their portfolio also going backwards, even if it's just by a couple of bucks. They're very sensitive to that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So another question, I think someone's just testing their understanding. So if a 65-year-old rolled over $1 million of super into the lifetime pension and starts the pension the next day, Well, is that possible? Do they have to go through a growth period? And if they did start it, would they only receive 4.65% if there was no deferral?
Mm. So with the Agile product, there is a minimum 3-year period when you're actually starting that investment to stay in growth phase before you can start that lifetime income payment. So when you're trying to calculate, we do actually have our lifetime income rate sheets on our website, and you don't need to log in to view it. You can actually go in and guesstimate, well, if I'm going to recommend an Agile product today and I'm going to recommend that they turn on income in 3 years' time, what is going to be that rate that turns on? And you can see that upfront straight away.
Yeah. And those rates are guaranteed for the life of that policy. So you lock yourself in at your age-based rate and your annual income escalator. You know exactly what your lifetime income rate is going to be after every single year of deferral into perpetuity, no matter what happens to markets, no matter what happens to interest rates. The rate can only change for new members coming in because market conditions will vary over time.
Yep.
And I believe, Yannick, as well, our rates, they're set on a month-to-month basis. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We've got a rate committee which varies those rates. Now, we haven't seen a lot of variation this year, but that's obviously very sensitive to how the underlying interest rate markets perform. One thing to highlight there as well, as you mentioned, our website and the online tools that we have. So we have a great projection tool that allows you to incorporate Agile into a model portfolio and actually map out how that performs over time. And as I can see, you're bringing up the slide there. So sorry to steal some of your thunder.
Oh, no,
back to you. And run us through all of the support that's available.
So probably 3 other things I would mention in addition to our modeling tool. There is a link that we're very happy to send you to give you direct access to go in and have a play. We've also got at BDMs on standby if you do want a quick 10-15 minute walkthrough of all the different functions and how it can affect outcomes. From a, I would say, operationalization perspective, if you are actually recommending Agile, we've simplified the process by creating a full comprehensive SOA text. So that's ready and available, as well as a detailed Wealth Solver X-Plan walkthrough guide that's been tested by paraplanners. And really those 2 documents from a process perspective will make the advice process nice and simple if you're recommending the product. And before we wrap up,
paraplanners will be glad about that.
Yeah, I can imagine, because when we actually were working with quite a few large paraplanning practices, asking them to test the document, they actually really genuinely valued being involved in the process, because it's giving us as the product provider insight in terms of how to make your lives easier, like from beginning to end. So yeah, well tested.
The other thing I'll highlight here is that a full IRS integration is coming. So we're actually building out a full integration into the Xtools suite, which will make your life easier. Yep. We've got a question coming through around rates, and you're spot on, whoever asked this question, when you're saying currently it's as simple as adding an age-based rate plus an additional income escalator each year. It's just important to know that both of those rates are actually age-based. So it's not as simple as saying it's 4.35 plus 30 basis points for every single client that you see. It really depends what age are they going into the product, and that'll define both the base rate, the age-based rate, but also the income escalator. So if you enter at a later point in time, you actually get a larger income escalator to compensate you for the fact that you're going to have likely a shorter deferral.
And Yannick, you mentioned earlier that watch this space. I know a lot of the super funds are looking at different retirement, lifetime retirement income streams or variations of that. Can you comment any further about some of the? So are you talking to some super funds, industry funds, about how to utilise this product and the trustees?
Absolutely, we're spending a lot of time with all of the super funds. They're all really keen to bring Agile to market. And I think being on your APL will give them even more confidence that this product is supported, that there is demand for it. We know that whenever we ask members, what's most important to you in retirement, about 75% across any research that you see in market will say an income for life is the most important thing. But then we have this annuity puzzle, right, where very few people actually go out and take out annuities, and it's very much a product that's sold rather than bought, which is a bit confusing. And so we've built Agile to actually overcome a lot of the traditional barriers to annuity style products by giving full flexible access to capital for the super version of the product being fully integrated into the super and account-based pension account, so that the member doesn't see that balance disappear, it doesn't roll out. And so we're definitely expecting to integrate into super funds over the coming years. Those conversations are going really well.
Yeah, no, and I think as Isabel said at the start, it gives members the confidence to spend down. So just knowing that they've got potentially an age pension plus a lifetime pension, then it gives them confidence to spend down on their other money, which is, as we've heard, a lot of people die with the same balance that they started with when they retired, which is sometimes not the best way to go. And just to clarify, another question coming through. So when you do start one of these products, the rates are locked in when you start, or do they change down the track, or is it only changing for new clients that might come in?
Those rates are locked in. So once you take out a policy, you've got that HBS rate, you've got that annual escalator for the rest of your life locked in. The rate committee that Ez talked to, that sets new rates each month for any new clients coming into the product. But once they sign up, it's guaranteed for life.
Great. Excellent. All right. Well, I think we've gone through all the questions. And I was speaking to you earlier, Yannick. So what we're going to be doing is speaking to some of the fund leaders of the funds, working out how best Allianz can support the advisors at each of the different funds and what assistance they might need to use these products or help understand these products. So we'll work with the leaders to get that sorted. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we finish up?
Just a really big thank you for having us today, for spending the time with us. We love being here, and this will just be the first of a lot of engagement, as you alluded to, Craig. We have a comprehensive distribution footprint around the country, so there is a BDM near you, and we have the technical services team here in Sydney that frequently travel around the country as well. So we're always available to support you on the phone or virtually. And in person as well, because we do have those boots on the ground.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for running through that presentation. It's, as I said at the start, it's one area that us as a licensee have been looking at a lot more, these lifetime income streams. I know the advisors are a lot more interested in it now, and as we've said, clients are interested in it as well. For all the advisors, this copy of this presentation and the video will be available from early next week on the Advice Solutions Hub, and for those that have attended at least 80% of this session, their CPD will also be automatically updated. So thanks very much for joining us, and thanks very much, Isabel and Yannick, for running the session today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.